This is one of the most alarming environmental disasters that I've reported on as a journalist. And I'm not sure I've witnessed destruction on such a large scale before. This is Bayelsa State, weeks on from the start of the floods that have swept across Nigeria. The federal government says over 1.4 million people are displaced, and there have been over 600 deaths. The worst floods the country has seen in at least a decade. On the ground, people are in distress. Loved ones have been lost, and businesses destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of homes and hectares of farmland have been completely destroyed since the start of the floods. Today, I'm in Akemfa community in Yenagoa, one of the worst affected communities in Bayelsa State.
The flood was affecting us very serious. We cannot move. Also, our farms, our mother, our children, without this boat, we cannot move. We cannot cross.
On average, a canoe ride here costs 50 naira for a one-way trip, which isn't affordable for everyone. As flood levels remain high, people are also at risk of waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid.
All my body is scratching me. Also, sickness, fever, typhoid, malaria is affecting us very well.
A few kilometers away in Azikoro, on the outskirts of Yenagoa, several stores sit in flood water. Nene, a restaurant owner, took me towards what was once her pride and joy. Now, the water is above one's knees, and with no insurance, everything that she's built has been taken away.
The damage is too much. Both my fridges are all damaged because before I came, the water has already taken over the place. So the whole fridge are inside the water. So we cannot go inside because that area, it will get up to this place. You cannot do business. Even my house, the water is taking over. So we are just managing in one uncompleted building. As you can see now, nobody can come into the water.
If there's any way that can create a soft loan for us, enable us to start afresh, it will be good for us. A month plus now, there's no way to cope. We already hang outside to just whether we can get our daily bread. If not, my children, they are locked them in a hotel room because they can't come down. And we are paying daily 3,500 naira. It's not easy.
According to authorities, floods are currently affecting all 36 states in Nigeria and the Federal Capital Territory. And the Bayelsa State government says 99% of Bayelsans have been displaced. Relief intervention is ongoing, but far more aid is needed, and support for businesses too.
Since the flood started, the thing have affected us very much. Like in our business, as you can see, we are not doing anything since 1 month now. Nothing is moving, no business. Even my children, we lodge them in hotel. We are paying every day 3,000 naira. So nothing is moving, no business. We are just chopping our capital.
The water have affected so much people. Damages. It has damaged so many people, loads.
Back in Lagos, I visited the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. Heavy, unprecedented rainfall has been listed as the primary reason for the floods, but also the release of water from the Lagdo Dam in neighboring Cameroon.
Before Lagdo Dam was released, 2 weeks was given, and we started moving, preparing. So it's a responsibility of everyone within and outside the country to prepare for disasters. emergency management is very, very dynamic. Dynamic in the sense that every disaster that occurs is also dynamic. When you manage a disaster this time, the next minute when the same disaster reoccurs, it will come with its own dynamism. That's the issue. So we cannot predict how a flooding will take place. Even this year, we didn't expect flooding to be as much as this, but as early as February, we started desensitization.
Nigeria's topography is important to consider. Two of the largest rivers in West Africa flow through the country: River Niger, which comes in from the northwest, and River Benue, which flows in from northern Cameroon. These two waterways meet in the town of Lokoja in Kogi State and flow south to the Atlantic Ocean through a single waterway. Unfortunately, several homes are built on floodplains, essentially awaiting disasters like this when the rivers overflow their banks. This NASA satellite image on the left was taken in October 2022, and the image on the right was taken a year earlier during more typical conditions.
It's really challenging to see more and more of these extreme events happening, and knowing that this will continue to happen over time. When we compare these two images, you really see how the river has gone past its banks. We see the extreme flooding that has happened, that has essentially covered large areas of agricultural fields, of vegetation, and where people have lived. The Niger River is a river that naturally moves. And so when you build in an area that is a natural floodplain, there is always the risk of extreme flooding. Unfortunately, especially with increasing extreme events as expected with climate change, there is an expectation that these areas will be flooded more regularly.
Africa may contribute the least to global emissions, but the continent is most affected by climate change, which is why funding for climate adaptation is vital. Ayan Adam is the CEO of AFC Capital Partners, the asset management subsidiary of development financial institution Africa Finance Corporation. She says that funding for adaptation in Nigeria has been insufficient.
The world has already warmed, and Africa contributes very insignificant amount to the current warming. However, we're suffering from the impacts of that warming. This has resulted in severe and adverse stressors that are manifesting in the continent everywhere. Because of that, first, we need to significantly look at what is coming to Nigeria. So far, I would say very negligible amount of funding has come to Nigeria in the context of adaptation, period, both in agriculture, in infrastructure, in livelihoods. So these are the core areas of adaptation. What we should call attention to now is for the donor community to look at the bilateral institutions that are working in Nigeria, also a lot of the development institutions, to support having an emergency package to support the rebuilding of livelihood in a meaningful way. So at least let's bring people back to normal. And that has to come in a form of highly, deeply concessional or grant funding so that we can construct houses that are way above the level of flooding that has happened. We need to replant a flood defense mechanism. We need to relook at the infrastructure that connects these communities to market. This is a wake-up call for COP27. And I would like to say that a significant amount of funding will be required in the context of Nigeria to support climate-proofing this country from the negative impacts of climate change, which we are living through and we're seeing. Yes, so in AFC, what we have done is that we've started this wake-up call over 2 years ago. And we look to how we approach infrastructure. So we launched last September, the Infrastructure Climate Resilient Fund. In short, the ICRF. ICRF will look to climate-proof infrastructure, large-scale infrastructure. And we are in discussions with the concessional world through the Green Climate Fund and others, how to bring those funding so that we can de-risk the local pension industry as well as private sector to build for the first time infrastructure that is resilient to the impacts we're seeing today.
The devastation caused by the floods is immeasurable, and the ramifications will be felt for many years. Climate change in the country is not only evident in increased rainfall and flooding, but also in drought, desertification, rising sea levels, and temperature increase. As Nigeria tries to rebuild from this, preparing for future disasters is crucial. The effects of climate change may cost Nigeria 30% of its GDP by 2050, and 9.4 million people could be displaced, according to the World Bank. So working to avoid this is important, not just for Nigeria, but the world at large. Laila Johnson-Salami, Arise News.